Good afternoon, one and all present here. I am Sahil Mohammed Abul Hussain. On behalf of School of Languages KIIT, I welcome you all to the orientation on helping students develop a dissertation. The topic is very relevant to discuss as the demand of research now has a varied extent. I believe the discussion will enlighten us with the recent developments in the area and will also provide us with the insights and future directives for our own research growth. I feel privileged to introduce our speaker for today's session, Dr. Beerendra Pandey, Professor and Dean, School of Languages, KIIT. Dr. Pandey is a Fulbright scholar from State University of New York, Stony Brook, USA. He received his master's and doctoral degree in English literature from the same university. Before visiting the USA as a Fulbright scholar, he had completed his undergraduate and postgraduate degrees in English from Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, and Bihar University, Muzaffarpur, respectively. Dr. Pandey has over 34 years of teaching experience from the UG to PhD level at Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, Nepal. He has taught self-designed courses in writing and rhetoric, trauma theory, affect theory, and human rights literature. He has supervised more than 50 MPhil theses and a dozen of PhD dissertations. Dr. Pandey is a well-known writer in the area of literary and cultural studies. He has about half a dozen books to his credit, including Intellectual History Readers to 2005 and Movements in Cognitive Methodologies, New Boundaries of English Studies 2007. He has authored 11 book chapters and most frequently cited of these pedagogy of partition literature in the light of trauma theory in Southern postcolonialism. This book was published by Routledge in 2008. Before we start, I request all the participants to put their mics on mute. I would also request the participants to post your queries in the chat box at the end of the session for further interaction. Now I would hand over the podium to Dr. Beerendra Pandey to start the session. Sir, please.
Thank you, Sahilji, for your very flattering words for me. Let my performance today match the words that you used for me. I begin by sharing a PowerPoint presentation. So let me share it. Okay. Developing research proposal, and this is in spread over 2 days. Basically, the basic intention is to train our teachers who have to supervise, who will have to supervise MA students for their MA dissertation. And I also hope that the presentation today and tomorrow will also be useful to our PhD dissertation writers who are enrolled with School of Humanities. तो आगे बढ़ नहीं रहा. Okay, so this is in 2 parts. Today's presentation on proposal writing is in 2 parts. The first part is pre-proposal activities. Normally people ignore this. And as you will realize, this pre-proposal activities, this part is so important. If one goes for proposal without really having an appreciation for pre-proposal activities, the proposal itself will not be very good. At the second part, I talk about the actual proposal for research. So in this part, the first slide is research work. I begin by talking about research work in literature. What is basically research work? A research work that a dissertation is in literature, what basically that means. Well, basically that means gathering information about a particular work or a particular author, or even things outside the work. We gather information, the researchers gather information, and they then understand the things, and they basically communicate that understanding to equally well informed readers or experts through a large written work. So what is a research work? A research work is fundamentally a candidate's understanding of a work or works, author or authors, period, or even some cultural things outside the text, and they convey their understanding through a written dissertation to their peer or to experts. In MA and PhD dissertations, students have to present ideas, and through that idea, they have to make an original point on the topic of their selection, on the topic of their choice. So basically that understanding which dissertation writers convey through their dissertation to their peer or to experts, that at the center of that understanding is their own original idea, which they have hit upon and which they will try to establish through their work. So topic becomes very important. Choosing a topic becomes very important. How can we choose the topic, or how can we help our students choose the topic? The first thing in this is that we should always give a space to our students who are attracted to any topic. Something to which they are attracted, that must be accommodated to the best possible way. Why? This is because if they are interested, if their interest is respected, or if they write research work on topic of their interest, they will be passionate about it. And writing a research work, even a small research paper, requires a lot of effort. And without passion, it will be difficult for anybody to do it well. So, in order that the students are passionate about the topic, we should give credit to their interest as much as we can. And this idea about the topic, where does that idea to the students must come from? That idea should come from their own experience, their experience of life, their values, their concerns. If there are things that they have assimilated in their life out of their experience, and if the idea comes from their own assimilated experience, then the idea for the chances for idea to be original will maximize. This is why we should also keep that in mind. And sometimes students come to we teachers because they are fascinated by a very new topic. But unfortunately, on that new topic, there is almost nothing or very little resources. And if that is the case, then I think we should discourage our students to go for such topics without simply because without enough resources, they will not be able to do the research. They will not be able to do a good job, and things will be very, very difficult for them. So interest is all right, their attraction to a topic is all right, but we must also see to it that the project is viable in the sense that the resources to carry it out, to execute it, are there in place. Okay, now, when they choose their topic, what should be the topic like? Should the topic be general or should the topic be specific? Let me share my own experience as a teacher, as a supervisor. At the MA level, I don't know how many theses I have supervised, maybe more than 500. MPhil, I have supervised more than 50. And PhD, I have supervised about a dozen. And at least a dozen students are still, working under me. So my long experience tells me that, students in South Asia, in India, Nepal, Bangladesh, they normally go for general topics. And this is where they make a very fatal mistake. It is actually wrong to write your research on a very general topic, because when you write your research on a general topic, the danger is that you will merely be recycling information. You will not be able to say anything original, anything new. There will be no contribution at all besides the recycling of information in your own language. So therefore, the general topic should be discouraged. What is the example of a general topic? So for example, on the left side in the table, you see Mulk Raj Anand. If somebody says, I want to work on Mulk Raj Anand, so that is too general a topic, right? If somebody says, I want to work on Shakespearean tragedy, that is too general a topic. And if they work on these topics, then what will happen is that the research work will degenerate into a mere compilation, recycling of information. Therefore, instead of saying Mulk Raj Anand, a better topic would be, a more specific topic would be colonial undertones in Mulk Raj Anand's pre-independence writing, or post-colonial overtones in Mulk Raj Anand's post-independence writings, kind of things. Instead of saying Shakespearean tragedy, should be saying the specific topic could be poetics and politics of prose in Shakespeare's major tragedy. Shakespeare also uses prose here and there in his tragedies, which are normally in poetry. So what is the political reason for using prose? His use of the prose, what does that tell us about the cultural politics of the Elizabethan age? Because the characters for whom that prose has been given, normally they belong to the lowly status of the society, of the Elizabethan society. So this, in that sense, it may be a cultural political matter, but it has also its own poetic value. Poetic by here, poetic doesn't mean poetry. Poetics here means it has its own value as a literary device. So topic could be like this. So we can be specific about a research topic when we narrow down the topic, as you see in the table. There is a narrowing down. So when we narrow down, it's very important. This last slide is very important. When we help the students narrow down the topic, and by this time the student as well as we teachers know what will be the projected treatment of the topic. That must be, these two things must be in the line of the contemporary critical trend. Very important. And in Indian universities, I am sorry to say, many universities in India don't respect this thing. which is actually a very bad thing. Very bad thing because there are two reasons for this. Reason number one is that knowledge keeps changing. Something that is new will tomorrow be a stale. Something that is hot tomorrow that will not carry that much of value. And also in our discipline literature, if we become monolithic, as many Indian universities are, they are monolithic in the sense that the method of analysis is the method of analysis that has been in currency when India has started the British India has started setting up universities. Right from then, in literature, the trend is to have just new critical line of textual analysis. If that is so, then a research work on an author or on a work that, for example, Pramod Gupta produces, Pramod Das produces, or for Tanmay produces, there will hardly be much difference. There will hardly be much difference. Therefore, the prevailing critical trend at the time should always be kept in mind when we help students narrow down the topic and we make students clear about their projected treatment of the topic. So what is the contemporary critical trend today? The contemporary critical trend today is that of cultural political criticism, right? And let me tell you a bit more. This new critical thing died its death in 1940 itself. In 1948 is the year when actually new criticism was buried or cremated, you may say. Okay. Then came, after a hiatus of a decade, came deconstruction. Lasted just for structuralism and deconstruction. They lasted just for a decade. Beginning 1980s, cultural political criticism came, which in the beginning was called new historicism. From 1990, cultural studies and its different avatars became current and are still in currency. So, a good university, a good department, a good school should always keep this thing in mind, that the research has to be carried out in line with the prevailing critical trend of a particular time. Preliminary search on the topic. So, students, when they do preliminary search on the topic, they have a topic by now, a fairly narrow topic. But in order to develop that topic into an argument, they have to look for materials, they have to read. So what is the starting point? Now again here, these are very basic things, but if we skip the basic thing, it is like if we don't know how to swim in a pond, and then we try to swim a very deep river, or say the Bay of Bengal. In the Bay of Bengal, danger will be drowned. So what I'm trying to tell is that the first thing that a prospective researcher should do is to look for information about the topic in a reference book. There are two types of reference books. One is encyclopedia. Encyclopedia is very general. Normally the entry of the topic will be in a page or a page and a half, at best 2 pages. There are also another kind of reference books. These are written by subject area experts. For example, in literature, we have MAGIL, MAGIL, MAGIL. we have so many reference books in so many areas of literature, and they are all written by experts. Normally, there the entry about a subject matter, about a topic will be in 4 or 5 pages, more than what you get in encyclopedia. But that's from where they should start. Because if a student starts from there, then they gradually, in a systematic manner, they become familiar about, they become preliminary, they have preliminary familiarity about the topic. And those 2 pages in encyclopedia or 4 pages in a reference book, because they are written by experts in the field, so it tells them a lot about what has been done and the critical trends on that topic. They come to know so many things, and besides, they also provide a bibliography at the end of the entry. So from there, when they read this stuff in the encyclopedia or in a reference book, and then if they follow up the bibliography, slowly they start coming to know the topic in a better way. So this is why I have emphasized on this thing. Now, when they have this preliminary information about the topic, there are 4 things that they should try to keep in mind. They should try to know about the authors involved in the topic or appearing in the topic. They should try to know about the time period in which the author wrote, the time period of the author, because this is the age of cultural criticism. And we cannot actually understand the cultural politics of work if we do not contextualize. And for that, the time period, the history of the time period in which the author is there, it's very important for students to know that. And also the time period in which the particular work is set. So for example, T.S. Eliot, for example, may be a modernist writer, but his work may be set in, maybe set in the 14th century. So that is the setting of the work, time period in which the work is set. That also the candidate will have to know the history of that time period, not the political history, the cultural political history. The nationality of the author and the nationhood of the author. Nationality and nationhood are 2 different things. I have done research on partition literature, and I can tell you that if we, with some exceptions, if you read Pakistani literature, that partition literature from Pakistan is completely from the perspective of Pakistani nationals. So is the case with many of the Indian writers, with exceptions. Many of the Indian writers, including the most acclaimed one who got the Cited Academy Award, I don't think he deserves to get that. Chaman Nahal, so nationalistic. Okay, and because this is the age of the cultural criticism, so it's very important to know about these things. Nationhood doesn't mean that. Nationhood means allegiance of a particular writer to a particular community or a particular ethnicity. So these things also we have to know in order to figure out the cultural politics. For example, let me give you the example of Khushwant Singh's train to Pakistan. What I mean by nationhood. Khushwant Singh actually writes that novel in order to refurbish the image of the Sikhs, because the Sikhs had got a very bad image as rioters during the partition, who murdered and looted the Muslims. So he is actually writing that novel to refurbish the image, salvage the image of the Sikhs. And this is where his nationhood, which is Sikh nationhood, plays out into the text. So if the student doesn't know about Sikh nationhood, will not be able to explore that thing in the text. And at the beginning, the students should not be reading very closely. They should be reading around. So this is why I have titled this slide as reading around. They should read very quickly. They should not read very critically. Of course, literature students should always read critically, but what I mean to say is that they should read quickly but critically. And as they are reading with a bias, or they are reading with a purpose, whatever you call it purpose or you call it bias. And what is that bias or what is that purpose? That bias or that purpose is that idea which is still lurking in his mind. He reads the stuff from that perspective, and as he reads, he should have certain questions in his or her mind, and these questions relate to key studies in the field. What are the key studies on the topic on which I am researching? What are the approaches of study to this area? What are the key issues in this field? What are any possible gaps or approaches yet to be explored? So when the student reads, does preliminary reading, a student should have these things in their mind. Then the student should turn the topic into an argument. They should turn this into an argument. What is the argument? Argument is the main thing which the students will try to prove by analysis of evidence both from the primary text and the secondary text later when they write the dissertation. So this argument at this stage will be tentative. It will be tentative. Tentative means they can always change it, refine it, revise it as they read on. But even though tentative, this argument will work as a springboard for deeper and wider search of required materials on the topic. So, though tentative, this argument should be treated as a projected focus statement. And how should they do it? After the preliminary reading, they should one day, when they feel very relaxed, they should merely free write the argument. What is free writing? When we do free writing, a free writing is normally of half a page to full page. And when we do free writing, we don't think about grammar. We don't think about even correct use of the vocabulary. We don't think, tax our mind about correctness of language. We just let the idea flow. We just let the idea flow. A student should just let the ideas flow. Then they should forget it. It's very important. This forgetting is very important. Now, how many days or how many hours forgetting takes place depends. If we don't think, if we just free write and don't think. Suppose we free wrote in the morning, we got engaged in some other things, and we did not think about, we did not reflect on what we wrote in the, what we free wrote. And in the evening, or in the afternoon, if they revisit it, by that time they may have forgotten it. Some people may take even a day or so, it depends, right? But it's very important that they do this free writing of the focus statement and then they forget it. Why? Because then they will be able to edit and revise their own free writing in a better way. So once they have edited and refined it, revised it, that becomes their tentative focus statement or their tentative argument, which will work as a basis for their wider and deeper research into the topic. Otherwise, what will happen if they don't do this? and they go for library research, what will happen? Well, they will be simply flooded away in the deluge of information, because there is so much of things on the research database. They will think that everything is important, which actually is not. So this slide tells us about the focus statement. The focus statement, what is focus statement should, it is actually the essence of the to-be proposal, because they have still not, they are in the process of writing the proposal. So what is going to be the problematic? The problematic is the problematic part is the essence of the proposal, and this focus statement filters into that problematic. Therefore, this focus statement becomes the basis of their in-depth data selection from the research database. What is research database? Well, a research database is a searchable collection of information. In library research, a database is where we find books, book chapters, journal articles. Each database contains thousands of articles, millions of articles, what thousands, millions of articles. And so that the student search things with high relevancy. This is why that free writing of the focus statement will be of help to them. This collecting the right data is a skill, and we call that collection skill. And this collection skill, actually students will hone in the collection skill when they spend more and more time on the computer in the library. And they should have an obsessive and compulsive attitude about it, that I have to look for as much as I can. I share my own experience with you. In 2001, I became ABD. ABD means all but dissertation. In the USA, in order to do PhD in literature, you have first of all to do coursework. Then you have to show your specialization in 3 different areas. Every student has to show a specialization in 3 different areas. I specialized in contemporary, modern and contemporary South Asian literature, Native American literature, and literary theory. Okay. Now, what they make students do is they make students read 80 seminal works, including books and book chapters and articles, journal articles, 80 in each area. So it comes down to something like 240, right? Normally, they give students 1.5 to 2 years of time. And they have 9 hours of comprehensive examination, 3 spread over 3 days. In each area that you have done very serious kind of reading, you have to prove to the dissertation committee. Dissertation committee there comprises of 3 persons, 3 possible supervisors of your thesis, and they will sit and you have to. They will quiz you for about 3 hours, and once they become convinced that you have actually read those stuff, then they will ask you to write the proposal. When you write the proposal, then they, after a week, they have a special conversation with you as to how you revised the proposal after you got the feedback at the defense. Normally in India and Nepal or in South Asia, This 9 hours of comprehensive examination and specializing in 3 areas, this is done away with. We don't do. I have not seen any Indian universities doing this. The university where I was teaching, that university in Kathmandu, it also doesn't do that. So problem with our students becomes is that our students are very underread on the topic. In the USA, this is not the problem because they make them have up-to-date information in 3 specialized areas, out of which they choose one to write the dissertation. But in India, because this doesn't happen, so students are very underread. They are not actually ready to write the dissertation or even the proposal. So this is why before they write the proposal, they should be doing this extensive research from the research database, and they can begin with Google Scholar, Google Books, WordCat, and other library resource, online resources like JustStore, EBSCOhost, Project Views, etc., etc. This is also very important because I believe this is where research in literature in general in India is behind the rest of the world, and so is also in the field of literature. What should we collect? What is a collectible data? Well, a collectible data, the hottest one is the last 3 years. Recent one. We call it recent one. Our first instinct should be to collect those books or book chapters or journal articles which have been published in the last 10 years, the recent one. The current one. Then the recent one. Recent means up to 10 years. Anything beyond that is a stale, hackneyed, useless stuff. In the USA, what they do is, if any student would use a book or a book chapter or a journal article which is not recent, yani after 10 years, the student will have to justify it to the dissertation committee why you are using, why he or she has to use the older stuff. Okay. So one of the reasons why quality of research in India is not very great is also because of this. So our effort should be to make students look for current and recent and not for the very older stuff. Okay. What data collection method? Well, basically, they should be collecting data in 3 stages. In 3 attempts. Their first attempt should be to collect data on the primary text chosen. The primary data, the authors, the work. Again, here you see there is a problem here. Suppose somebody is working on the Westland, says that I want to work on the Westland. So looks for data only on the West, which is not a good idea. Because how can you understand the Westland? How can the students' understanding of the Westland be a good one without, say, for example, the knowledge, his or her knowledge of the song of J. Alfred Prufrock, for example. Okay. So they should, first of all, their instinct should be to collect the primary data. If they are reading one author's one work, should not just be reading that, should also be reading the other work written by that author. Second attempt should be to collect on the secondary data, the articles or the books written by the critics on that author or that primary text. And when the third and the last attempt, they should be logically focusing on theoretical data. Theoretical data means, these days we do research in literature from a theoretical perspective. We have a theoretical framework. So what framework they are using, they should be collecting data on the theoretical framework. These are Google Scholar. I have given the web address just to actually academic search premier. This is not available. This is EBSCO host. This is not available at KIIT, and I think it should have this. We should be praising KIIT Central Library to have this. This is a European database. Very good, very good. Project Muse is American database, research database for literature. Very good. KIIT used to have it as I was told, but KIIT is no longer subscribing to it. The ProQuest dissertation that our library has. And then there is this SC Hub. Are you aware of this SC Hub? Yeah. Like if you don't find things anywhere, suppose we don't have access to EBSCO host, and if there is something in the EBSCO host, if you know the DOI number, and then you give this DOI number, SC Hub will give you that. So these are for articles and thesis resources. Sorry. Hey, what happened? Now it's corrected. Okay. Yeah, then for books and book chapters. Well, the best one is WorldCat. I have given you the address, WorldCat. The beauty of this WorldCat is that, in buses, in India, you see, when you go to catch a bus at the bus stand, you see in buses some hawkers selling very cheap kind of books. This WorldCat has even those entries. And I remember, when I was working on a partition literature, I came across one such book, and I asked my supervisor, should I also include this? And my supervisor told me, oh, Mr. Pandey, you are treating it as a trash. But how can you treat it as a trash without having gone through it? Okay. So you may have heard about the Library of Congress, right? Library of Congress in the USA has anything and everything. Okay. From what hawkers sell in the buses to very excellent books published anywhere in the world. And actually in the USA, you can't say that I don't know, I haven't seen it, because they have their library loan system. They will get you the book from anywhere in America, anywhere in Canada, anywhere in England, New Zealand and Australia, the Anglophone world, anywhere from there, they will get you the stuff. Okay. So you cannot really say, I don't know. Therefore, that WorldCat is very good. Actually, it's a very good database. Then there are, of course, Google Books. The beauty of Google Books is that it also gives you certain portions, and you can, if you don't have access to the book, at least you can read those portions. You can take a screenshot and print it and read it. I myself use this Google Books a lot, even if I don't have access to the books. Then there is this Library Genesis. This is something like that. SC Hub. This is a book database, all pirated, but very useful for us. And then, of course, since Amazon has come to India, any book that is in the States, you can get it here through Amazon India. So now we cannot say actually, we will have no pretensions saying that, oh, we have no access to this, we have no access to that. Okay, so before I go to proposal writing, I have finished this part and I would like you to put me questions. You can unmute yourself and put me a question one by one.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
So thank you so much for this beautiful presentation, and I'm really.
Your voice is broken.
No, sir, because it's, yours is. I mean, both of our audios are working together.
Oh, hold on. I have muted.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So thank you for first thing, sir. It was a very, very elaborate presentation, and you talked about the pre-dissertation activities, which it's really, really very important. I mean, something that the students must understand before choosing the topics and etc. Sir, I have a few questions actually. The first one is, sir, when you were talking about if I'm not mistaken, so when you were talking about the preliminary search where the students must get a general picture on the chosen topic and all, so you were focusing on 4 aspects where the author, his nationality, his nationhood, and the context is more important. But so say for example, if somebody is doing a research on, or maybe wants to write a dissertation on, let's say a Lacanian perspective on T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. So at that point in time, what he or she should be starting with, the Lacanian theory or the Wasteland? I mean, which should be more important for that student at this stage, sir?
Okay. I got it. To answer your question, let me begin with a proverb, and the proverb is, it's not the tail that wags the elephant, it is the elephant that wags the tail. Okay, so Lacanian psychoanalysis is the tail, and the primary text is the elephant. The student should always give more importance to the primary text. That the student is going to use Lacanian perspective. What this means is that the student has a bit of a familiarity with Lacanian psychoanalysis, and at this stage, that familiarity will be enough. Okay, what the student needs is greater clarity about its application or contestation. I'm deliberately using the 2 words, application or contestation. Right? In the primary text, right? So therefore, they should be giving greater priority to the primary text than Lacanian psychoanalysis. I am not saying that you don't give importance to the theoretical framework, but theoretical framework, as in one of the slides, you remember I had told that it is in the third attempt that they should be looking for materials on the theoretical framework. Problem with thesis in India and Nepal or Bangladesh, South Asia is that I call third-rate dissertations at any level, MA or MPhil or PhD. And unfortunately, most of the universities have such third-rate, dissertations. Are that they give greater importance to theoretical framework. They give greater importance to the tail than the elephant itself. You know, that is not a good thing. Theory is for the understanding. For a theory gives us a perspective of the literature. That is the primary text. So it is research should always be dictated by the primary text than by theoretical framework. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Very good question.
Sir, I had another question actually. Sir, I had another question actually, and thank you so much, sir, for clarifying this. The second question is, sir, related with the what should we collect? Sir, when you were talking about the collection skill, so you mentioned about that, collectible data is something which should be current and recent, that is, within the span of 3 years and, not exceeding 10 years. So, but what if somebody is doing maybe a diachronic study? So don't you think, sir, at that point in time, it's more important? Like, I mean,
yeah. Let me answer your question. See, the idea is that students should not be depending too much on old stuff. Okay, that's the idea. This doesn't mean that old stuff is completely irrelevant. The nature of the research, as your question implies, if somebody is doing a diachronic study, the very nature of the research work requires the students to go for even older stuff. So that is there. I was basically talking about the preferred tendency. The preferred tendency should not be to look for older stuff. Remember, I had said that if the researcher can justify why he or she is using the older stuff, the dissertation committee allows that. Okay, very good.
Thank you so much.
Sir, I have a question regarding the collection of data. You have mentioned that there should be a criteria of recent one and very recent one.
No, recent one and current one.
Current one, recent one and current one. So this can be one criteria to zero down on the material that we will be using for our research. So, but what other parameters we should put in to finalize that, okay, this must be our final research material to go with? And
the other parameter is relevancy. From collecting of materials is a thing which begins before you do the proposal, and it keeps on happening when you revise your thesis before final submission. This keeps happening. Okay, but whatever stage you are collecting the data in your research, it's very important that you collect data that are relevant to your research. For example, I give you a very simple example. If somebody is working on irony in Kate Chopin, Kate Chopin, American author, the very famous story, The Story of an Hour.
Yes.
If somebody is working on irony in Kate Chopin, and Kate Chopin is a writer, if you go to search, research database, you'll find thousands, at least thousands of articles on Kate Chopin from feminist perspective. Now tell me, if the researcher is working on irony, out of those 1,000 articles, hardly 2 or 3 or 4 which touches upon also irony would be useful. Those 995 articles will be irrelevant for him or her. So always this relevancy thing that I said, always collect data from the perspective of your focus statement. Or when you write the proposal, then this is what we call problematic. A statement of the problem, hypothesis, objectives combined becomes problematic, as you'll see. I'll be telling you in the second half of the presentation.
If the audience has any question, they can ask to sir directly, or they can write it in the chat box.
Sir, I have a question.
Okay, sure.
Sir, what if the research is on some oral text where the author is not specified, or if the research is based on a literary tradition where multiple authors are involved? In that case?
Well, in that case, oral literature. Sorry.
Sir, muted.
Am I audible?
Sir, muted.
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 Yeah, it's okay.
Am I audible? Okay. See, very good question, Gaurav. We have not just oral text. We have also visual text. We have also a performative text. Say, for example, Jagannath Rath Yatra. Now, Jagannath Rath Yatra, if there are photographs, if there is a video, that video becomes a text. That photograph becomes a text, right? Or there is a rite, or there is a ritual, right? And there are books about those rites and rituals. Or even if there are no books, there is a way that we perform those rites and rituals. There is a way of performing those rites and rituals. So just a literary text is not a text. A visual text is also a text. A cultural text is also a text. A performative text is also a text. And here again, what the problem arises is, I see many students from literature department, particularly in Kathmandu, where this performance theory is very popular. And performance theory, when they apply that performance theory, they will say that Devanjali has been to Kathmandu. The other day she was talking to me about the Kumari. She will say, I will write thesis about Kumari, right? But what they basically end up writing is giving an anthropological account. We belong to literature department. See, our job is to analyze literature. Our job is to basically analyze a text. So we should be analyzing that oral text. If there are so many versions, we should be collecting as many versions as we can. Should not just be depending on one version. We should be giving 3, 4, 5 versions, whatever versions we have access to. And we should be also talking about why, what the variations mean actually. So did I answer your question? Okay, thank you. So should I now proceed? Okay. Unmute. Am I audible? Yes. Okay, okay. So now I move to proposal writing. I think by now you must appreciate my spending so much time on pre-proposal activities, right? So once now students are ready to write a proposal. You see, a proposal without a proposal, there can be no dissertation. If the proposal is bad, the students will have a lot of problems, right? And that proposal doesn't come out of the blue. It comes, a good proposal comes through those activities, right? Which I just told you. So now, let's move to proposal. Why we need a proposal? Well, a proposal is actually a formal, what do you say, agreement. It is actually a formal agreement between a candidate and the department or the school. It is a formal agreement. Okay. And this proposal also gives us an idea about the capability of the student. The standard of the dissertation to come. So this dissertation proposal should be treated very seriously, particularly for two reasons. One is because it is a kind of a contract between the student and the school or the university, a formal kind of a contract, whereby it is after the proposal that the student will be finally assigned a supervisor. And if the proposal is good, the dissertation will also be good. If the proposal is bad, I don't know how the student will finish the dissertation. Okay. So when students prepare their proposal, what should be their goal? Their goal should be to discover the spotlight. That spotlight means the focus statement, you know. They should know for himself or herself what is going to be the focus of my study. And the clearer they are about it, the better for them. And once that critical spotlight or focus statement is clear to them, then they should be, you know, through the proposal, they should be trying to validate the researchability or the research potentiality of their project. By writing a good proposal, the student also demonstrates his or her analytical skill, argumentative skill, combative skill, or evaluative skill. These are all very important word, you know, adjectives you see. The bread and butter for research in literature is analysis. Without textual analysis, you know, nothing happens. That is the bread and butter. But analysis must lead to very cogent arguments. The student also must demonstrate argumentative skills. Now this combative, you see, just this morning I was having conversation with Shahil Hussain ji about academics in the USA, and we are talking about A grade, B grade kind of universities there, and A grade universities in America, in literature departments, they don't allow anything less than combative research. Okay, B plus universities or universities below that will merely be happy with analytical or applicational kind of a research. You take a theoretical framework, you apply it, they will be happy. But you know, very good universities, A grade universities, if the dissertation committee is not convinced that the research is going to be combative, they will politely ask you to take a MPhil degree and give up the PhD effort. Okay, this happened with one of my friends from Liberia, like me, who was a Fulbrighter from Liberia in Africa, in my university, and he could not be combative enough in his research proposal, so the university gave him what do you say, an MPhil degree, and asked him to be happy with it. Didn't allow him to continue with the PhD. So this is why this word combative. And of course, evaluative, because in a way, like we are, whenever in literature we do any kind of research, we are analytical, because we are analytical because we become evaluative. For example, in my own research, PhD research, I am very evaluative. I am saying in the canon of partisan literature, these authors are very good, and these authors are so, and these authors are very ordinary, kind of things. Because if you read any history books of literature, there also you see what that history book of literature does. It does the evaluation. That is also our bread and butter. So these skills, writing skill, analytical skill, argumentative skill, combative skill, evaluative skill, all these skills the students demonstrate in their writing of the proposal. And these are the skills they will be needing plentiful way while writing the dissertation. And a dissertation is also a dry run. A proposal is also a dry run for dissertation writing. What does that dry run means? Is that the kind of other day I was having conversation with our KIIT students, bachelor level students, I think they were, right? Najia, bachelor level. And while having conversation with them, I quickly figured out that she is a very bright student. Okay, and how did I so quickly figure out she is a very bright student? Because of the way she was using vocabulary. It was not just she was using very good vocabulary, the use of the vocabulary reflected her critical thinking. So, a dissertation proposal gives an insight into the form, content, and other, capabilities required for completing the dissertation. So this is why this proposal should be treated very seriously. But unfortunately, even I think some of PhD writers, I have not seen their proposal, who are enrolled with our university, quite a few of them, I am very sure, should have been very hasty with the proposal. So, thing is, don't be hasty with the proposal thing. These are the core things in proposal: a descriptive title, introduction, the problem, the review of literature, and research procedures. Well, introduction, because I have introduction 1 here, introduction 2 here, because in one slide I could not cover. So let us have a look at this slide. What does it say? The researcher introduces the reader to the topic with a brief, typically half a page reader. The introduction in a proposal should not be more than a page. When I say should not be, I am not saying that it will happen, it should happen as a rule. Sometimes it may go even to 1.5 pages, doesn't matter, but normally it should not go beyond 1 page. Actually, half a page of introduction is very good. Even half a page of introduction is very good. When we say introduction, let me be very clear about it. I tell you a very short anecdote. since 2008, I was sent by higher secondary board in Nepal to train teachers, teaching in class 11 and 12. I had to train them for about 2 weeks. So I had to take a flight from Kathmandu to Biratnagar, and then from there drive to a place called Dhankuta in the hills. When I was in Biratnagar, some professors from there, from the local campus, came to see us, professors of the Madheshi origin. Madheshi means people living in the hill Tarai of Nepal, came to see me. One of them told me, Beerendra ji, the Kathmandu newspapers are so discriminatory. He was a professor of political science. They are so discriminatory. When we send them anything, they don't publish. And I said, oh, I am also a Madheshi. Madheshi, people of Indian origin, they are called Madheshi in Nepal. I said, I am also a Madheshi. But whenever I send an article, they gladly publish it. So why should they not be publishing yours? You know, here is my article. You get it self-published. Okay, I took it. I have the habit of getting up very early in the morning. I normally get up around 3:30 and I don't find sleep thereafter. I am an early bird, very much unlike Devanjali. Okay. So, no. So one day I took that in the morning and I started reading it. It was an article of 5 pages. When I read the article, 3rd page, towards the last of the 3rd page, I could figure out, oh, what he is trying to actually do. So almost he had wasted 3 pages for nothing. Okay. And this happens with most of the educated people in India and Nepal, because we are brought up, our upbringing is Sanskrit upbringing. We may have been, our mother tongue may be Bengali, our mother tongue may be Maithili, our mother tongue may be Odia, but the source is that Sanskrit. And in that tradition, there is to give a very long kind of an introduction. Okay. In the Western tradition, it is not like that. Everything is functional. All sentences are functional. Even in introduction, all sentences are functional. We don't put anything without a purpose, without a function. When I was in the high school, my English teacher would always say, your introduction is very bad. Cut it down. My Nepali teacher would say, oh, you write very good, but your introduction is too short. So I was like confused between what the Nepali teacher was telling and the English teacher was telling. Okay. So it is because of that. We normally tend to write very long introduction, unnecessary, which is not actually required. Whatever we put should be functional. You will have an idea about it. So the primary purpose of the introduction is, I have used the metaphor. If you look at the 3rd bullet point, appetizer. It's the appetizer. Now, whenever we go to any hotel, the main course meal comes later, but it is the appetizer which prepares us for the main meal, right? So an introduction is something like that. Okay. What are the things I said that introduction is functional? So what are the things we should put in the introduction? We should clarify the topic of the project. We should clearly state the primary text that we are going to discuss. We should also be giving our readers a trailer of the theoretical framework. Not the full film. Full film comes later. Just a trailer of the theoretical framework. And we should also speculate about making a specific contribution to the field of study, that is to the field of topic. And as we end the introduction in this way, we should, the last sentence of the introduction should be something that should, as a logical way, lead to the problematic. So the last sentence of the introduction should not be a problem of a statement, but should lead towards that. So see here, these are the things we should be putting in introduction. Is there anything which is not functional? Right? So these are functional things that we should be including in introduction. And no, our students will write so many things in the introduction, unnecessary things. Don't do that. Then we come to problematics. This problematic, this is the nucleus of the proposal, research proposal. Why it is nucleus? Because it establishes the rationale, the significance and need for the study. It tells our readers, normally readers of the proposal are the professors, so it tells them the raison d'etre of their study. You know, the main reason behind the study, why you are carrying out the study, and the potential value that could flow from the study, and also why, what is the necessity of doing this specific study at this time. Driver. So these components of a problematic or a problem, what are these? Let us look at the things in italics. The first one is the statement of the problem. Second one is purpose of a study. And third one here is research question. A statement of the problem is actually a signpost. Say, for example, I am a new person to Odisha, to Bhubaneswar. If I have to go to Puri and I am driving alone, so what guides me to Puri? What guides me to Puri are the signposts, right? Signposts and road. Right. So this problematic is something like, a statement of the problem is something like that. And we don't write too much in a very succinct manner. We do this thing. And this statement of the problem has two key components. One component is purpose of a study, why the study is proposed, and what outcome is expected, or what output is expected. And the second thing is research question. So you can have research question at first, followed by purpose of a study. Don't have purpose of a study before research question. A research question comes first, purpose of study comes later. This research question is a statement. It can be in interrogative sentences, it can be in assertive sentence, depends on you. If you use assertive sentence, then use this dissertation seeks to or tries to kind of expressions. And so when the student develops the problematic, either the assertive mode or the interrogative mode, that also depends on the choice of the student as well as the test of the supervisor with whom the student will be working. This problematic must also have hypothesis. Actually, this is the crux. This is the crux of the research proposal. So what is a hypothesis? A hypothesis is a shrewd guess. It is a presumption, assumption, an opinion, a hunch, an informed judgment, or a very good guess, inference. You may say it is a provisional solution to the research questions. And a good hypothesis not only determines the direction of the critical inquiry, but it also justifies the aptness of the theoretical framework that you have decided or that you will be deciding. Then problematic also has this, limitations and delimitations. A limitation, while a limitation is a negative thing, delimitation is a positive thing. For example, doing research from India has its own limitations. Things have improved much, but still not, things here have not improved to the extent that the facilities are elsewhere in the world. So we are here limited by so many things. So if the student cannot do anything because of those things, they should be saying, okay, point these things. Why I am not doing, I'm limited to this because of these realities. So this is a negative thing. This delimitation is, this is something which is under the control of the researcher, and there are things there, but we'll say that, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm not doing that. I'm doing this, I'm not doing that, because these are actually not required. So my thesis I delimit my thesis in this way, but that delimitation should look justified. Okay. Then we come to theoretical framework. Normally people confuse theoretical framework with methodology, which is wrong. A theoretical framework is not methodology in literary research. Theoretical framework gives us a perspective for interpretation or perspective for analysis, and it comes from the revolution of literary theory. Since the 1960s, there have been a revolution in literary theory, and those theories are actually very useful in giving us a perspective so that we can come up with a completely new kind of an interpretation of a text. But what normally students, the mistake that they normally make is that they will say, oh okay, I am using, say for example, the theoretical framework of deconstruction. Deconstruction itself is an ocean. Feminism in itself is an ocean. Trauma theory in itself is an ocean. You will not be requiring all the strands or all the pearls. समुद्र के सब मोती की जरूरत नहीं होगी. You will be needing a few pearls, right? A few strands. So basically, what strands? First of all, state the theory. If it is feminism, okay, say feminism. But what in feminism? Which strand? Be specific about that. And which book talks about that strand? Which book or which article talks about that strand? Talk about that here. Mention about that here. Okay. If this research is going to be from the perspective of trauma theory, disqualified. Which thing in trauma theory? Somatic trauma theory, psychological trauma theory, cultural trauma theory, or trauma theory affective trauma theory. What trauma theory? Which strand? Okay. So this is what we do in this theoretical framework. Now at this stage, let me tell you, can there be a research proposal or a dissertation without a theoretical framework? Well, theoretically, yes, it can. Because our basic methodology is analysis. So theoretically, yes. But the thing is that these days, like it is always better to have a theoretical framework, and also it becomes easier for them, and it also gives actually a very new kind of interpretation than not to have one. So I am not saying that a research in literature, literary research in literature cannot be without theoretical framework. I am not saying that. Well, of course it can be, but it is better to have a theoretical framework than not have. Then we come to literature review. My experience is that again students become very hasty with literature review while writing the proposal. Very hasty. They find it cumbersome to do the literature review, and if they become hasty, if they find it cumbersome and do not do it well, how can they decide that their problematic is actually original? Okay. It is the literature review that helps determine the newness of the project, the originality of the project. Okay. So, why should we carry out literature review? There are 5 reasons I have given. It provides a thorough knowledge of the critical literature on a primary text. It gives an in-depth knowledge of the methodologies common to the field and a feeling for their usefulness and appropriateness in various settings. One work has been interpreted or analyzed from so many theoretical perspectives, right? So when you do carry out literature review, you also come to know, okay, these are the critical approaches to it. And it helps establish that the proposed research is really needed. That is, it helps us to find the gap, the research gap. It also helps us to define the research problem. And it also helps us to be precise about our hypothesis. So, what is the rationale? The rationale for it is just one word, that is originality. If I use a phrase, literature review is a must for determining or for showing to the dissertation committee that the work is going to make an original contribution to knowledge in this field. And it also helps justify the methodology and theoretical framework. And now let us make a difference between methodology and theoretical framework. Well, it's very easy when we say that our methodology, our basic methodology is textual analysis. But analysis of what? Analysis of a character's psychology, analysis of the setting, analysis of the verbal density or the literary devices used, analysis of what? Right. So, what actually in the analysis, what will be the focus of the analysis? What thing will be the focus of the analysis? Will it be the character? Will it be the setting? Will it be the verbal density? Or if it is a dialogue, say for drama, will it be just dialogue? What? So, literature review also helps us to be clear about our line of analysis, our focus of analysis. To acquaint oneself with discordantly different views and to demonstrate one's ability to join in the conversation. Okay, very important. I am making a presentation. And when I finished the first part of the presentation, I invited you to ask me questions, right? I invited you to join conversation with me. What happens in a conversation? In a conversation, either we don't agree, or we agree, or we partially agree, right? This is what happens. So, by carrying out literature review, we are actually having a conversation with a host of critics, with the tradition of scholarship itself. We are having a critical conversation. We will be agreeing with some of it, we will be disagreeing with most of it, or we will be partly agreeing or partly disagreeing, but not without reason. Okay, not without reason, because Devanjali agreed with me because Beerendra sir said so. No, that should not be the thing. You should agree with me if you are convinced, right? And you must communicate your sense of being convinced, right? So the ability to, you are also demonstrating by carrying out this literature review, your ability to have critical conversation with scholars in the field. And also, if you do good literature review, then you don't what do you say, stuff your dissertation with unnecessary stuff, unnecessary things. You write only relevant things. You don't bring in extraneous things. Okay, what is a bad literature review? खराब literature review कौन सा होता है? ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है. Which is irrelevant, rambling, or mere drift, or ideas not presented in a particular order, and when that happens, it is very difficult to figure out. The other day I was talking with Subhranshu sir, and I was telling here at KIIT I find it very difficult. Either I don't understand, or if I understand, I find that the sentence is giving 2, 3, 4 meanings. So obviously when I am saying so, what I am saying is that the problem is not with me, the problem is with the other person, who writes like that, or who speaks like that. The title is too descriptive. Sorry, if the literature review is too descriptive, what does that too descriptive means? What the writer has said, you give a very long, what a critic has said, you give a paragraph about it without actually giving a sense to the reader why you are giving so much of a space to it, right? Then that becomes a bad kind of a review, or your review ends very abruptly without clarifying the main findings, or you have done very sketchy and very, review for the sake of review, a very inadequate level of or kind of literature review, then these are all the features of a bad review. Well, this I have copied from a book. What is the typical complaint when the external examiner reads your thesis or your proposal? What is that person is called referee. In technical language, you call referee. So what is the typical complaint of a referee? So I have just copied it from Adrian Walwork's book. See what the author has to say. The author has not made it clear why some references are mentioned. They appear to be there just to make the paper longer, in which they succeed perfectly, and see more important in which they fail rather than a support of the author's approach. The authors do not seem to be aware of the state of the art. I strongly recommend that they widen their literature search. In addition, they have too many references from work carried out in their own country. The literature review is not international enough, and the context is thus too myopic. There are papers cited in the bibliography that are not mentioned in the paper, and vice versa. These should be removed or added as appropriate. So, this is the typical comment of an examiner about bad kind of literature. What are the things to once again keep in mind in this complaint? Oh, things have been made here just to fill the pages. Most of the thesis, see, you will be surprised why I am sharing my own PhD about my own PhD work with you. My PhD dissertation is of 119 pages. Theses, PhD dissertations in the USA are from 40 pages. Most of the 90% of the theses will be from 40 pages to max 200 pages. Okay. They don't give importance to the length. In India, oh my God, I keep getting appointed as external examiners. I had got one from Fakir Mohan University, I must tell you. And 3 times I rejected that dissertation. 500 pages long. Okay. And there were hardly 50 pages of the things that could be actually that deserved to be there. So I made that thesis writer remove 450 pages, bring it down to 50 pages, and then make it in a whole and prune the thesis down to something like, say, 80, 85 pages. Okay. So, so much of page filling exercise, merely filling it with information, which is actually has no room at all. So that review should not be like that. And also, second bullet point tells us that the review is very limited because the student has access only to materials in their own country, as has not been able to collect things and recollect from the international universities or international academia. And also sometimes what happens is that they mention the work in the work cited or bibliography, but they don't talk about the work. They're in the review of literature. So these are the 3 things pointed out here. Here actual, you see, this is again from that very book. This is an example of a very good literature review of a book. That book is by Blinko 1992, and again I have lifted it from that book. And this is also very important. You see, wherever I have lifted, I have what have I done? I have acknowledged. Though it is a PowerPoint presentation, I have acknowledged, right? It's very important to do that. Otherwise, you will be charged with plagiarizing. And this is something that the researcher must be aware of. Should not, in our MA dissertation manual that we have developed, in the very first line, I added this, very first line. The dissertation should be plagiarism free in Times Roman 12, things like that. So let us look at this review here. Persistence has most often been studied in terms of cultural differences. Blinko 1992 found that Japanese elementary school children showed greater task persistence than their American counterparts. school type and gender were not factors in moderating task persistence. This left culture as the remaining variable. Let us analyze this. Let us look at the first sentence. Persistence has most often been studied in terms of cultural difference. What will our students mostly do here? They will have unnecessarily 10, 15 critics or authors who have talked about persistence. Now, is persistence the focus of the research? No. Focus of the research is what? Focus of the research is culture as the remaining variable. Persistence is not the topic of the research. So, the reviewer has not here spent time in reviewing those books or articles in detail that talk about persistence. Right? Simply mention that persistence has often been studied in terms of cultural differences. So he acknowledges, the writer acknowledges that, okay, this thing has been studied from the perspective of, very widely studied from the perspective of persistence. Then it gives it catches Blinco's book by its very throat, right? Gives the gist of that book. That Blinco found that Japanese elementary schools children showed greater task persistence than their American counterparts. So, what does that sentence actually mean? What does that sentence actually mean is that persistence, which is a good persistence on the part of the students, which is a good quality, and which has been studied in terms of cultural differences, and in line with that, Blinco's book also shows that cultural differences do matter. Why? Because Japanese students, elementary school children, show greater persistence than their American counterparts. So Japanese culture and American culture have a shade. Japanese culture, in a way, cultural difference. Japanese, because they are culturally given to persistence more than their American counterparts. So school type and gender were not factors in moderating task persistence. This leaves culture as the remaining variable. And then it says that gender is not the factor, school type is not the factor is the culture. So it focuses on that culture. It doesn't take into consideration gender, it doesn't take into consideration school type, A grade school type or B grade school type or C grade school type. It takes the key variable here is culture. So just see how Nepali में हम इसको बोलते हैं घाटी समाते रह भन्नु के catch the argument by its very throat. So same thing I have analyzed here, don't need to repeat it. So how should we structure literature review? There are two ways to structure literature review. One is chronological and one is thematic. Chronological structuring literature review chronologically is not a good idea. Chronologically means we take up things in a chronological way from, like, somebody wrote in 92, then 93, then 90, somebody suppose 95, then 94, 93, like that, in a chronological way. That's not a good idea. If we do chronological review, then the danger is that the clarity will not emerge. So it is always better to do it from a thematic perspective. What I mean by thematic perspective? Thematic perspective means from the perspective of the focus statement. From the perspective of your focus statement or our focus statement, if we do that, then it has a maximum bearing on the research inquiry. This is also very important. Now, this is the language thing. When you read literature review, you will see that our students give an impression that they suffer from poverty of words. Because they keep repeating the same word. Has said this, has asserted this. Okay, said, asserted, kind of, told, said, asserted, said, 2-3 kinds of verbs they keep repeating. So again, I have taken this from a book by Bigham, and he gives a list of the verbs, which are very useful verbs, which we can actually use in literature review. So it's just a list of the verbs, so that the reader doesn't get an idea that we actually suffer from poverty of vocabulary. Okay. Then sentence structure also. We should not be, another problem with literature review is that most of the students will use the same kind of sentence structure. So we need variety. We need variety. So here, like, we can, we can say it is clear that it must be, it must be accepted that the evidence that it becomes ostensible from the remark that kind of things, like, so that the things don't, look so hackneyed. Then I come to methodology. In the methodology section of the proposal, what they should be, doing or, writing. First of all, they should say whether the research is library-based or field-based or both. Theoretically speaking, it can be both in our field, but normally it is library-based. Practically, it is library-based. Okay. We don't use quantitative method of research, neither we use qualitative method of research. Our method of research is analytical, critical analysis of the text. But as I said earlier, what thing in the critical analysis? That it has to be, specified. Identifying the right focus of analysis in line with the theoretical framework. So it is the theoretical framework that will tell the student whether the student is going to focus on the character, delineation of the character, or imagery, or metaphor, or verbal density, or whatever, etc., etc. And stating the reasons for zeroing in on the language of critical analysis. So the component of the textual component on which we give focus, that will also determine the direction of the language of the critical analysis, right? The researcher's own critical analysis का भाषा कैसा होगा, वो उस पर निर्भर करेगा. For example, the topic that Devanjali had said earlier when she put the question to me, Lacanian analysis. So if it is Lacanian analysis, that will be psychology thing. Psychology means the mind of the character, the mind of the character, the behavior of the character, right? So that the researcher will have a language on that line, right? So methodology also will, justify the kind of critical language that the researcher will be using. Then chapter division. Well, in chapter division, a thesis or a dissertation follows 5-paragraph essay model. In a 5-paragraph essay model, we have first chapter introduction, last chapter conclusion, And then we have the body paragraphs, what we call the middle paragraphs, right? At least 3. In the same way. Now, when I say 5 paragraph model, I don't mean to say that the dissertation has to be only 5 paragraphs. It can be even 4 paragraphs. Sorry, it can be even 4 chapters. It can be even 5 chapters. It can be even 6 or 7 chapters, depending on the scope of the study. But whatever the scope, the first chapter has to be introduction. The last chapter has to be conclusion, right? And in between should be textual analysis. Now, this is not the way theses are done here in India. They have a separate chapter on the review of literature. They may have a separate chapter on theoretical, framework. But in the States, they don't do it this way. Normally, they don't do it this way. To be safe, I said normally. They will have this review of literature. They may not have review of literature at all. Review of literature will be reflected in the overall dissertation itself. Or even if they include review of literature, that will be part of the introduction, not in a separate chapter. And even methodology, theoretical framework and methodology, for that they will not have a separate chapter. They will talk about it in the introduction itself. But they may also have a separate chapter. So it's either you include them in the introduction itself. When they introduce it in the introduction, that becomes much shorter, because they don't talk about the entire theory. They talk about only the strands used. So they will include it in the introduction itself. If the theoretical treatment requires a bigger treatment, only then they will have a separate chapter. So if that is so, then the review of literature chapter or methodology chapter should not be considered as part of textual analysis, right? Should not be textual analytical chapters should follow thereafter. So say, for example, introduction chapter, review of literature chapter, and methodology theoretical framework chapter plus methodology. So 3 chapters. Then textual analysis 4, textual analysis 5. It depends on how many textual analytical chapters you have, right? So these will be the body paragraphs and then conclusion paragraphs. Now, normally our students, what they do? They will say chapter 1, introduction, chapter 2, methodology, chapter 3, textual analysis 1. No, not allowed. You spell out the title. Spell out the title. What is the title? What is the possible title of your first chapter? What is the possible title of your second chapter? What is the? Of course, you can change the title later. You can revise it, but you must have clearly spelled out chapters that you have in mind. So this is about chapter division, and finally we come to this bibliography and work cited reference. Let me first of all talk about work cited. And APA, they call it reference, we call it work cited. And we follow MLA, both in text and at the end, that is work cited, we follow MLA. And which edition? Now, normally in Nepal and India, what they do is that it is the whatever edition is in currency. This is what they follow. For example, we have 8th edition these days in currency, so 8th edition. But in the States, it's not like that. In the States, they will basically follow MLA, but the university has its own, will tailor-make MLA to suit its own taste. So their researchers have to go by what the university is saying rather than MLA itself. But here, universities here, they don't tailor MLA to its own test. Therefore, here we have the MLA that is in currency, If it is 8th edition, tomorrow if there is 9th edition, it will be 9th edition. And students can easily get access about this thing on the internet. Everything is on the internet about the 8th edition or any editions. And then I should talk about here this bibliography thing. This bibliography, what is the difference between bibliography and reference? Bibliography is something that has not been used, referred to in the writing of the proposal, but that the student will be using later on. Right, so that is bibliography. And better thing is that we press our students to give annotated bibliography. What is annotated bibliography? Annotated bibliography is that why it cites the reference, and then in bracket it says why the candidate thinks this is going to help. Okay, so 2-3 sentences. It summarizes the article from the perspective of the focus statement. Then the reader gets a sense, okay, why this person has included this, and the researcher also knows why he or she has to use it. So I think that's all from my side. I am signing off. Thank you, but I don't sign off before I get the opportunity, before I get the respect from you in the form of questions, because not asking questions is so disrespectful. And only then I'll sign up. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the enlightening session. I request the audience to post their questions to sir.
So may I? Sir, am I audible?
Sure.
Sir, I don't have a question in this second part, but rather I would actually thank you on behalf of my colleagues of the extreme hard work that you have put in for the presentation. This comes straight from heart because, sir, I am in the final stages of writing my own dissertation, and frankly speaking, I had to, it was very difficult. This is so methodical, this presentation. Like it gives, I mean, since we attended this, it will be very easy for us to communicate to okay, sir, I was just saying that So I was just saying that on behalf of my colleagues, first thing I would like to thank you for this brilliant presentation, this hard work that you have brought in for us. So like I was sharing, sir, my experience that I'm in my final stage of writing my own PhD thesis. But my journey had been really difficult because, as you rightly noted, so there is a lack of proper guidance, honestly speaking, and it took me a while to understand that, this is something I should be including in my literature review, and this is something I should not be. And as you rightly said, sir, if the literature review is right, then half the work is done there. You understand, you have a clear idea, you have a clear picture of what you are going to write and what you are not going to include. So the second bit, what you are not going to include, was very important for me, and which I think that you beautifully clarified, sir, in the presentation. And since we will be communicating this to our students as well, because they will be writing their MA dissertation. So I think that if they learn it now, this will not only help them write a dissertation, but also research articles, because I mean, the same pattern, it's followed over there as well. So it's going to be really very helpful, I must say. This is one of the best, evenings, I must say. This is one of the best evenings, frankly, sir.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar, sir. So I just joined now after my exam duty. And thank you, sir, for guiding my scholars. 3 of my scholars are here. Thank you so much, sir. So I'm Dr. Swati. So please unmute yourself, sir. I cannot hear you.
I could recognize you, recognize your voice, ma'am. Okay,
3 of my scholars are present here. I could not join.
yeah, your scholars haven't asked me any questions. They should be.
Sir, we have Ankita and Shubhashri and Prabhudatta.
But they didn't ask me any questions.
Probably they have understood whatever you.
Okay.
Or it can mean otherwise also.
Okay.
Sir, good evening, sir. I'm Ankita.
This is Ankita.
Ankita
Okay,
Sahu, sir.
okay, Ankita. Go ahead.
Sir, the session was really very helpful, sir. For now, I have understood, but for now I have no such questions. But in future, I might have. While before submitting my thesis, I'll definitely ask you questions regarding this. But now it is there were some doubts, but you cleared it very nicely, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Be present tomorrow because.
Yes, sir. I will.
This today was just the trailer. The real film is going to be tomorrow.
Very helpful, sir. Thank you, sir. I will be present tomorrow as well.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.